Good morning. Happy Thursday. Welcome to a special edition of Let's Build. We get to do some more unboxing today. We are unboxing the box connector with Chris. How you doing, man?
Great. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing great. I always look forward to these episodes uh, because there's so much value in and around, HubSpot right now, and sometimes it's just like I love being the coach, the consultant that's just be like, oh, do you know this thing exists? And that solves all of your problems that you're telling me right now. And then it's just like, okay, a couple button clicks. And so many the times these apps that are built for HubSpot are really good at solving those. So I'm glad you are willing to come on the show and kind of share the knowledge of what's possible.
Of course. Appreciate it, Chris. Where's the best place for us to start?
Well, you gave a little bit of your background before we started. Um, Kind of like as much as you need to kind of get into the why of you guys building this box connector.
Mhm. Been in the CRM space for about 18 to 20 years. Been running a consulting company. Just to introduce myself, I am the CEO of SparkGrid Software. So we kind of spun off of my consulting company, focused on building integrations for primarily HubSpot at this point, but have deep experience with implementing Salesforce, doing custom development on Salesforce, and in those years of working with Salesforce, like we obviously very active in the ecosystem, and Box um, had been one that we'd actually done quite a bit of custom development on. So we knew the API for Box in and out and up and down, and we saw Box a lot. So for those that don't know, Box is a very large. The way that I like to position it is say it's essentially Dropbox for the enterprise. So there's a lot of security controls and uh, certifications that other other providers do not provide. So largely used by pretty big companies like in financial services and in um, uh, like med tech and pharma, things like that. There's a few compliances that I can get into in a little bit, but in any case, since we knew the Box API, I had gotten a lunch with some folks at Box and asked them, why don't you guys have a HubSpot integration? And they said, oh, well, we're just focused on Salesforce. And I said, can we write it for you? We'd love to write it for you. And he said, absolutely. So Box has been so phenomenal in terms of supporting us and kind of having our back. We actually, BoxWorks was about 3 weeks ago in San Francisco, and we went out there and we won an award, New Partner of the Year, at that event, which was
Awesome.
really exciting for
Congratulations.
us as we kind of came out of the gate. And the reason that we got this is we had first launched the beta on the old CRM card interface because it was the only thing available, right? So we had launched that beta and we got about 60 companies to sign up doing no marketing, right? So Box was super excited about it. HubSpot was excited about it. And then um, it was announced, but we had already known that all the new UIX stuff was coming out. Um, so we had started building that in the background. So when we fully launched, which has been about 3 weeks, it's all on the new HubSpot UIX. So we're using all the new toys. It's baked right into the center panel. Can't wait for it to show it to you.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely feel free to jump in whenever you feel like. But I do have a question. You mentioned you know, starting to focus or already being focused on building, for HubSpot. And I'd love to understand from your perspective the difference between, maybe building for HubSpot and building for Salesforce or any
Sure.
other softwares, because there's a stark difference as a user and as a coach on it's very easy to tell when somebody is building for the HubSpot tool set
Mm-hmm.
and when they're just trying to push data like into the system. And a lot of us have had multiple shows about how to tell what's happening and the risks of when somebody's not building for the tool set.
Mm-hmm.
um how yeah, like how has it been different, building for HubSpot from your perspective?
Yeah. So luckily, I essentially hired a developer back before we started building this application. And he has like a marketing background, but also is a developer, and he has tons of experience. And he was learning Salesforce and doing Salesforce development, as that was primarily what we were focused on. And as soon as he started reading about how, because we have HubSpot clients as well and do some implementations or some different items, and he dug right into HubSpot right away and just loved the technology stack that it was built on. He was so biased toward it. He was like, I just really like working with this stuff, right? So they're two totally different technology stacks, right? The UI, and from the feedback I've gotten from a lot of either new employees or people that are kind of new to CRM, that they find that HubSpot's kind of easy to navigate for the end user, which I've actually found too, because we're of course using Salesforce and HubSpot. We have multiple instances of both, right? Um, so the development experience has been overall positive, but building on the new UIX, there's a lot of holes that they are working to currently fill, where we're not able to get all the data that we want to know, like how often people are using these. It's a little bit vague when we see people sign in and leverage the tool. Like, we can kind of tell we can tell calls are being made, but we can't tell who it is. And so getting like usage statistics, all that has been a little bit more challenging, but they've been great to work with. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I have less personal experience with other systems, but I have enough. Like I started like my first CRM with Salesforce, and I tried to do all the things, and
Yep.
I was able to do all the things, but as soon as anything broke, I didn't have budget to go get it fixed, and
Right.
ran into these things. And but as I see new people, come from anything outside of the HubSpot ecosystem, there's always a reaction about how much easier like certain aspects are. You do get to the places where clearly they're biased towards the user experience.
Hmm.
So they'll build out the tooling without all of the things that you're talking about, as far as like visibility for the admins, visibility for anybody wanting these kind of backdoor or background, data points that really don't might not matter to the user of the system. So I don't not surprised that those gaps are there. So I've always appreciated that kind of bias towards that, because what we don't want to do is recreate these other situations that we've always heard about, where you just end up with a system that's a mess and it's not used.
Hmm.
Um, but it's super interesting. I'm super excited to dig in with you, because a lot of people are focused on HubSpot's effort right now to go up market and
Yep.
serve enterprise, and that's something I haven't really been exposed to. So I'm curious about. You mentioned a lot of the reasons why these companies have box, and as I was thinking coming in, I'm like, okay, what, like, one of the times where they're like, why aren't they using Microsoft, the 365 suite, or Google Drives, or
Hmm.
the things that I'm used to seeing, but also used to having challenges with, as far as file management between HubSpot and these other places. So I'm super excited to see what you guys got today.
Yeah, yeah. So, a large portion of the Fortune 500 currently are customers of Box. So, Box just hit $1 billion in annual revenue. So, they're a publicly traded company. And a large portion of those people are, um, of the Fortune 500. So, HubSpot's whole drive towards getting up market, I think this aligns very well. It's also been interesting to see. So it's kind of green fields a little bit and doing application. The app exchange for Salesforce is flooded, right? There are so many applications, right? And the cost of getting in HubSpot right now is not, we are not charged to list this. We are not charged as long as we're passing all the security certifications and everything. So the barrier to entry is pretty low as long as you're technically competent to do so, right? So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
remember there was a couple inbounds ago. Uh, my first inbound in 23, there was a session from the guys at Happily, um,
yeah,
about, like, just go look at the Salesforce apps, go pick one, and go and come
build it.
build it in HubSpot. Like,
That's
it's
right.
such a green field, and it's still that way.
It's still the
So
way, and now with the new UIX stuff, like, you can do a lot, right? Like with the cards, they were functional, but not to the level of what I think users expect in a system these days, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it'd be helpful to see what you're talking about, because that really is such a powerful change to the system. Like everybody was already getting excited about what was possible in the center cards or in the
Mhm.
center column. But really what we saw at inbound, and you know, it's good to see, like once for me, like once I see external people that are not HubSpot, like yourselves, um, like invested in developing for that,
Yep.
I know like it just inherently understand how valuable it is when companies are taking the time to immediately switch whatever their user experience was to this new way. So is that what you guys you said you had a card prior to this?
Yep, yep, in the beta. So that we had launched the beta, and we got about 60 companies to sign up on the beta, and it was a card. So basically, we'd have a modal pop up, but some of the it wasn't as interactive as we wanted it to be. It was just not quite. But we knew this was kind of like a proving ground for it. Let's get the beta out, see if there's an appetite for this application, um, proof of concept sort of thing, and then we can start to build the actual real application, which I'm excited to show you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's not waste any more time. Let's
All
get
right.
in there.
Sure. So let me do my, I'll do my whole screen if that's okay.
Yeah.
All right. So for those that are unfamiliar with Box, so Box is more than just file storage. That is like the core of what it is, but they've coined the term called the content cloud. So, and this is something that I know HubSpot is also mentioning as well, where like every enterprise, like 90% of your data is unstructured, right? Like all your files and back and forth attachments and emails going back and forth. Like, yes, if you have HubSpot, you have Salesforce, you have a database, that's great. That's all structured data, but the majority of content lives somewhere, whether on people's local machines. So getting and harnessing all that and using artificial intelligence in order to pull that metadata and then make that actionable is part of Box's vision, right? But they have the things that I'll point out here today are what I'm going to focus on are file sharing and Box Sign, which are both exposed in the integration. So you're able to see my contact record here.
Yes.
I assume. Okay.
Yep.
So the way this works today is it works on all of the core objects, contacts, companies, deals, tickets. It also will work on any custom objects as well. Okay.
Yes.
And so what we have, what I can show you here is we're looking at a given contact, and you can see here that I have a tab for Box. Now I'm going to pull this up. It's actually live hitting the API. I'm going to pull all the information down. So we've used a combination of the design language in HubSpot as well as some of the design language in Box. So Box has certain way iconography that to designate like, hey, are folders shared out or are they private or there's all different are they publicly available? All different sorts of design language that we kind of baked into this. But you'll notice, you're not leaving HubSpot at all. There's no like embedded iframe sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
So
And as you mentioned that, like if anybody's not familiar with the situation, and I think you were alluding to it earlier, a struggle like that I've come like last my last experience was integrating a CPQ,
mhm,
right? And you do the work as an admin team, as the managers of trying to support the sales team in this process. And it's coming over in the card, and you start to run into small things like, okay, is it in the system in a way that we can report on it, and how does it work inside of HubSpot? Is it actually connected to the tool set? Does it need to be? So super focused on that. But then one day I'm looking over this salesperson's shoulder, and he's got a 13-inch laptop screen, and he's having to work out of this CPQ, like uh little window pop up where he's got to scroll to do anything that he wants to be able to do. And I'm just like, oh no, that's not going to work. Like,
mhm,
you can't do your job effectively. So, this switch to be able to just like, when we talk about natively in HubSpot, like it can seem like a small deal. It's actually one of the biggest deals, in my
Right.
opinion.
That's right. So one of the biggest features of this, and it doesn't seem like on a surface that big of an idea, it's called pinning folders. So this can be done manually, but we can also do this programmatically. And essentially what this means is, let's say we have a deal record, and let's say, we have a folder. I'm gonna just demonstrate what pinning looks like. So you'll notice I can traverse through um, the file tree. It's doing a breadcrumb trail as to like me going through all these box folders. And I'm going to just select a given um, folder in here. So let's go ahead and pick, I don't know, this one. I'm going to pin this folder. So now, anytime you'll notice it went and did an update. So what we have is we have a property on the contact, on the company, on the deal, whatever else, that we store the box folder ID. So now anybody in the organization that comes to this contact record is immediately going to jump right to this folder to collaborate with all the files. So for instance, we are working on hooks into the workflow engine. One of our ideas is, hey, when a new deal is created, I want to automatically create a folder in this structure with these 3 subfolders and pin it right to that deal record. So
Oh my
then anybody
gosh.
that's working within there are just all working kind of in the same area, but you're kind of leveraging all the security and everything else that you get with, inherently with Box. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I want to see that world.
Yeah.
'Cause,
So programmatically, we can go in. All we really need is um, the deal ID, or the HubSpot unique ID, and then the folder ID, and we can link them together, right? I can show you some other features and functionality in here, but so now that we have this pinned, if I were to leave this record and come back, you're going to notice it's going to jump right to that one that I had pinned.
right. That is huge. So we're not having to scroll through a bunch of
Right.
attachments to find files and
Yep.
like
So
even
you're right in
like
here. The other nice thing is searching. So I can search my entire Box infrastructure, and note that this is all based on the security level set in Box. So that's inherently coming through. So everybody needs to, so an administrator goes in, authorizes Box and HubSpot, authorizes HubSpot, does an OAuth to Box. And then each individual needs to log in one time to say, okay, I'm Chris Eustace signing in here. And maybe Chris does or does not have access to certain files or folders. That's automatically going to show up, and allow or disallow certain features, functionalities, allowing them to see files, not see files based on that. But I can do a global search in here, and it's actually going to search across all of my Box stuff. Now it's just pulled up all kinds of folders that have W9, for instance, right? I can go
right.
and say, oh, what's this in the parent folder? Now this is across my entire enterprise, right? So I can come
Yeah.
in here, look at this. I find, maybe what I'm looking for here. I can then just share this out publicly. I can set my access to share this folder out. I can put a
Oh my
password on
gosh.
it, and I create a shared link. And I fire this now off to my client to collaborate within a folder, for example. Make sense?
Ah, yeah, it does. Um, and this what comes to mind, and don't have to jump ahead, but if it makes sense, I'd love to like dive into the security aspects of this because I think
Sure.
that's often very hard to understand. Like, oh, why can't we just do this with, G like Google Drive, or why
Yep.
can't we just set this up in our HubSpot file storage and kind of match it that way?
Right.
Um, but what you're describing here is always when we're mapping out, or at least for me, when I'm mapping out processes and data modeling and infrastructure of HubSpot, there's pretty awkward moments where it's like, okay, there's a file that needs to be stored somewhere, and
Mm-hmm.
how do we do it successfully in HubSpot? So generally, we come up with, okay, we're gonna create a field, for this link to the file wherever it is, and it's just never a
Right.
great experience,
Right.
right?
Yeah. And you have the ability to share out folders, to share out individual files, all that. There's also, if we go back, I'm going to go back to the pin folder. The other nice thing is, let's say I'm looking through and I want to click in. So we have automatic file preview. So no matter the type, it's going to pull through, and I get a preview of what it is that I'm looking at without me
Oh
having to
man,
go open it up on my local machine. Like I get the preview right here. Right.
this
Um,
is brilliant because this is the solve usually that we want or that we'll create in our heads, where we've got to find a way to bring the files into HubSpot
Yep.
and manage and be able to share them from there. Because the way I'm usually thinking about it in terms of data, and if we're calling these files like it's content or it's data, right? And we can either create it in HubSpot, we can manage, maintain it in HubSpot, or we can communicate it uh, in HubSpot. And at the very least, if we're putting our teams in the best position to be successful and we say that there's a unified view of the customer,
Hmm.
right? That includes things like the files that we're looking at.
Yep.
And at the very least, need it inside of HubSpot so that HubSpot can communicate it, so that people can communicate it from HubSpot. And so I love, what I'm seeing here. This is kind of blowing my mind.
Yeah, and we have the ability, based on like features and functionality. Like we haven't gotten into box sign and shown you that yet, but we can easily, based on actions happening within here, be recording like an audit trail in your activities if you'd like, right?
Yeah.
So we know when folders are being shared out and sent out, and if you want those recorded in the CRM, great. If you want that to just report on that in the box interface, that's great too. The other features I can get here, so I have obviously the ability to create folders anywhere I want if I have the permissions. I can upload files to Box. I can then share them out. Now these are all based on Box permissions, as I mentioned before. So I have the ability to perform all these actions within Box, but I'm never leaving HubSpot at all. Right. Um,
Okay.
any questions on this so far? If not, I can show you kind of what Box Sign does for you.
I think like based on what you just mentioned, uh, are there, as an admin, like say I'm in charge of both systems,
Mhm.
HubSpot and Box, like is all that permissioning being managed inside of Box in that
So all the
case?
permissioning for everything in Box, yes, is managed in Box. So you can get extremely granular on your permissioning. The other thing that's
Right.
nice to think about is you can think a little bit broader. Yes, of course, we're focused on CRM and HubSpot right now, but there may be divisions within your company that are not in CRM or HubSpot. They're collaborating and doing things, and they can just be working in Box, and maybe they're just doing spreadsheets. It's in finance or something like that. They're not interacting with the CRM. You're going to be interacting on the exact same folders that they are because they're going to be linked to Box, right? So
Yes.
getting the latest files and updates, like there is no emailing back and forth. It's all just kind of in the same spot, right? So I know when I come in here, yes, this is the latest forecasting spreadsheet that finance went and updated and I'll know that, but based on the timestamp here, right? And I'll know who it.
Yeah.
Um, the other,
Yeah. And a
the
lot
other.
of times
Sorry,
there's
go
a
ahead.
tool like this where if you understand it's being used, sometimes it's easier to connect the two separate systems to something like Box instead of trying to integrate, HubSpot and the other system directly,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. Yeah. So leveraging the power of the Box platform while you know all the security and everything else is inherent, right? There's no concerns about this. Is why all those large companies are using this as their primary content storage. The other nice thing is the file size. So there are limits on file size, but they are huge, like 5 GB, right? So if you're in architecture and you're storing very large document files, right, and you want to collaborate and share those out, right, easily can be uploaded, stored, right? You're not going to hit all these limits that you'd hit on a lot of other platforms. I don't know what the limits are in HubSpot for attaching, but I assume they're not anywhere near 5 GB.
Right. Yeah, usually not. I'm not sure exactly what those are either, but I think those are the things that you mentioned where uh, for me, a lot of the HubSpot value has been like trying to create transparency and, usability, like we mentioned. So that's why they're kind of just moving towards, enhancing the ability to manage permissions and user structures and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit behind on what enterprise needs usually are. So it makes sense, and I think it's super valuable for anybody that is, because it's very easy to get kind of buried and paralyzed because you're not able to manage user permissions the way that you need to, when you're trying to create this unified view,
Hmm.
right? So doing it in a way where we can manage these things in Box without having to kind of, mess too much with the data model of HubSpot and who can see what, because it's not really built to do that, right? Is a really effective way to still get to the unified experience that we need, while also creating this permission infrastructure that's necessary to, like, as you mentioned, these audit trails and who's accessing what when are paramount for a lot of the regulation and security, you know uh, processes that these companies they need to follow. Like it kills deals for HubSpot all the time when it's a black and white issue. Like, can you check this box or not? If not, we can't buy,
Right.
can't use it,
Right.
right?
Right. Um, I could show you sort of what Box Sign does. So the value in Box Sign, now a lot of e-signature platforms. There's many out there that are great, but there's a lot of overcharging going on there. And depending on the version of the edition of Box that you're on, they offer up to unlimited digital signatures, right? So there's a huge cost savings here for somebody that's using a competitor like a DocuSign and sending out. I think DocuSign charges like on a per envelope basis, so that's a send. Where here there are no limits, right? If you're on the enterprise level. So, and it's as easy as, so right now where this is at today, we can send out a box sign agreement. It can be e-signed. It's stored properly, secure. What's coming out in 2 weeks is actually the ability to use these tokens to pull through all your data from HubSpot into that merge template, and then from there, there's actually a full doc generation thing that Box is in beta of right now that we are also planning to bake in. That the doc gen is probably the end of Q1. The being able to take tokens and pull data from HubSpot into your box sign template is about 2 weeks. That'll be out in about 2 weeks. But I can demonstrate. Any questions on that before I show this?
No, I think, well, like when you say overcharging, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So in my experience, so if I'm just going to pull up here, and if we look at, let's see, a sign in here. Yeah. So, um, you know, DocuSign, for instance, charges on if you're sending out a ton of documents for e-signature, right? You're sending out hundreds a day or thousands a day. You're getting charged for each one because they're called envelopes, right? So you're sending out an envelope for signature, whether it's signed or not. You're being charged. You have like a limit. So you have unlimited e-signatures, depending on there are something to read in between here where there's API calls that have to be had. So it's unlimited e-signatures through the Box platform, but if you're using an API, which we are, obviously, there are some limitations on that where there are some additional charges, but it's nowhere near. So essentially, you can save a ton of money by flipping. If you're already a Box customer, why not leverage Box Sign if you're using it for, you can essentially drop another whole entire piece of software, right? Once we have all the features and functionality rolled out. Does that make
And
sense?
and we love being able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this was an area I wasn't really paying attention to, but we can see it happening with every other category
Hmm.
of SaaS, where, in the case you're describing, like we talk about proposal management and, the documentation management that is inherently needed, that hasn't always been there. So you see these platforms like a DocuSign or PandaDoc or, whichever one, they start, developing towards, this use case where it's actually, you know, um, starts to be more of a document management type deal. But since they weren't built to do that in the first place, they do, it does create costs and maintenance and management
Yeah.
that, it sounds like a system like Box that was originally designed for, cloud storage and now has built in all these other, capabilities that people generally need with those documents. So it's cool to see kind of another angle where,
Yeah.
a company that's really designed to do the thing that you need done, has added these other capabilities into the mix.
That's right. Yeah. So to perform a sign request, I simply do this, right? It's automatically going to pull through. If I'm on a contact or a deal, it's going to pull through the email of the individual, and I can have a subject. I can add additional signers to this, and then the way this works is so the box templates are actually stored in Box in a specific folder, and all of your available templates will show up here. And obviously, you want to name them something better than test box sign template, and you can set reminders, and you essentially create this, and it's going to create the sign request and fire it off to the individual. He's going to receive it in his email. You can then digitally sign it. We're going to get notified if it's signed. See, sign request created successfully. Now you can see the status of that sign request is sent. I can trigger things to happen within HubSpot based on this happening. I know PandaDoc, for example, really nice how you're able to update the stage, your deal stage based on things happening within PandaDoc. We can do the same thing here. All right.
Yeah, and
I can go in and preview this.
this is a perfect example of like we don't need HubSpot to be doing everything,
Right.
but when we can rely on these other systems and then create the visibility needed inside of HubSpot to be able to understand and again give us that picture that we need, like this is really, really powerful stuff.
Yeah. Couple other. Is there anything else you want me to show you here? I have a couple other talking points I'd love to chat
Well,
with you about.
uh, yeah, the one thing I think is like we talked a lot about enterprise, you know, but if I'm anybody else like lower than that, and I've had frustrations, with trying to, you know, integrate for lack of a better word, because I'm sure nobody's actually integrating stuff, but like working alongside Microsoft or Google Drive or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
like file storage. Is there a point where I need to be a certain size of business where the cost of Box makes sense, or the complexity, or all these things that we usually hear about between like enterprise solutions and let's say the small medium sized business? Is
Yep.
there a reason I can't use this as a small
Absolutely not.
business?
I mean, you can use this. So you can see we're looking at $15 a user a month is kind of the base pricing. The way that our our integration is priced, it's $5 a user a month, right? So we are not we have priced this in a way that small companies can easily get in and get this stuff up and running quickly, right? And immediately having it integrated, right? So 20 something around $20 for being able to do your e-signatures, all your file management, everything else. I don't think is unreasonable.
Not at all.
Yeah,
Not at all.
yeah,
That sounds like a great deal, especially like I'm thinking like a team of five, right? 100
yeah.
bucks a month for everybody. Oh man, that's a great deal. Like to
For
be able to do all the things, because I'm sure we're not even touching on, like I see a little bit of digital asset management
oh yeah,
like involved there, right? So like speak to that as far as like what I know it's challenging to kind of define categories that aren't well defined, and there's so much overlap between applications. So I guess from that angle, when I'm looking at all these things that I could use in the stack, or maybe that I'm already using, what are the things that maybe are first up for uh, this might be a better solution, for that thing?
if you're looking, I think to have any of your centralized, any of your kind of document storage centralized and everybody kind of working off the same page. The customers that we've landed have actually come to us because of compliance things. So we were actually told by customers. So in the mortgage industry, there's RESPA and CFB are two. I don't know much about it, but I was told Dropbox doesn't support this. I was at a conference and they told me you cannot use Dropbox anymore or you will not be compliant. And apparently that's native to Box, right? So Box has a lot of these things. There's also Worm for financial services, which is write once, read many. So they have compliance around that. There's compliance around GXP for med tech and pharma, right? So being able to inherently have all of this security all kind of managed in one spot and have this platform be able to scale with you as your company grows, right? So that's kind of where I see the biggest benefits of using this. We've been using Box for probably 15 years, right? And we're a small company. Now, the interesting thing was I had a friend of mine that's a local dad, and coming up with the pricing for the integration was tough. Like, and I don't know that we've nailed it, but he said, Chris, you're a small business owner. What would make you not, you know, retch back? I'm like, I don't know, maybe $5, right? Like anything more than that, it's gonna be painful for a small business owner, right?
Yeah.
You need to see the value, right? So that's where we landed on the pricing. Obviously, that's maybe a moving target. You know, maybe we look into usage based. I don't know yet, right? We're just kind of coming out of the gate now. So
Yeah. Well, I definitely like that mindset of you don't know what you don't know,
yeah.
and until you start seeing user behavior and what things people are taking advantage of, it's very hard to kind of prescribe that out of the gate. So I
Hmm.
love the angle of kind of letting the users help you understand where it needs to be. Um, I wouldn't be doing my job right now if I didn't uh, talk about AI at least once
Hmm.
in this conversation. How is that either playing a role right now, or how are you expecting it to play a role, in the future?
Actually, you slow pitched this one to me because I haven't even talked about this yet. So we went to BoxWorks, which was Box's annual conference in San Francisco a few weeks back, and we were awarded new partner of the year for kind of having pulled this integration together within about a 6 or 7 month time period, and signing up a bunch of beta customers and things like that. But we were also chosen to do an AI presentation. So Box they recently acquired a company called Alpha Moon, and there's actually a video on our blog of us. It's a very quick. It's like a minute long because I just wanted to give it sort of a teaser. But we gave a presentation on Box AI working within HubSpot, and the way that works is on a deal record. I can send a link out afterward if you guys want to see this video. On a deal record, we have a linked folder with a PDF on that linked folder, and we're kind of starring that and tagging that as an important file or something that we want to do. So what Box AI does, Box AI will look through that PDF and pull the metadata out. We then take that metadata, and based on, we go and update a field on the deal record, and it goes and looks at that PDF metadata and goes and updates a ton of fields on the
Oh
deal. And you
my
can see it
gosh.
actually happen in real time, right? So what that's going to do is reduce, if you have a bunch of contracts coming in, all you have to do is add them to Box, and we could set up an automated process to have metadata pull through and go and update stages or send out proposals or do whatever, right? So it's just kind of coming out, but we were able to do that and demonstrate that live at the event, and that was really fun. And I encourage you to check out that video. I'd even give a live demo of that if you're interested in seeing at some point. I don't have it set up here. That's my other developer has that, but
Man, you just said the magic words, live demo of
yeah,
that.
happy to do
I
it.
definitely think a part two is on the way.
Yeah.
And is this kind of that world of helping to manage unstructured data in ways that we haven't been able to before?
Yep. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the big my biggest takeaway from the Box conference. I've always thought of Box as a user of like, oh yeah, it's file storage, right? But I never thought about, and again, this is a lot of people are taking this approach of like, what about all that other data that's floating around your company or enterprise, right? There's so much more. Yeah, you could have the squeakiest clean CRM and financial system, and that's great. That's all your structured data. But everything else that's sitting out there is kind of in a big pile, right? People's machines, you know, inboxes. There's ways to actually take all your inbox data, all your mail data, and dump it into Box and parse through that metadata, and then we can get intent on all of the conversations that are happening with from an organizational level, not just the salespeople that are interacting, but maybe all the customer service people, maybe one-offs of somebody going out for a drink and saying, "Hey, that was great to see you," or all this sort of stuff. Being able to kind of pull all that together and then display that as like, I don't know, customer happiness index or whatever, right? So
Right. Or engagement levels. Like
yeah,
everybody would
exactly.
love to be able to measure like how engaged is this human being that we're trying to deal with.
That's
Uh,
right. And like, obviously we can all the emails are logged in our HubSpot as most people's are, but how often do you go and look at those? Only if you have to, right?
only if you have to.
But if you can pull all that together and summarize it in a logical way or ask it questions, right? That's where you start
Right.
to see a lot of benefit and power.
Yeah. And that's where like, we've seen an approach from HubSpot to try and structure, the data, and we've talked about like everything is an object land, and
Yep.
now we do have an emails index screen in HubSpot that's basically like a HubSpot email like portal inbox.
Hmm.
It's just came out like last week or the week before. Uh, and but they also like came out last week that they acquired Frame
Yes, I
dot
saw that.
AI,
Yep.
right? And in thinking of this live, I'm like, should I ask about it? Is it a competitor? Blah blah blah. But almost every time in these situations, like you talked about all the compliance things that Box has just wrapped up, and that's where like of course we need HubSpot to like move forward with these kinds of functionality. And just because they're going to do that doesn't mean you won't get any value out of this other app that's handling the unstructured data, in a much more effective and compliant way,
Right.
right? If anything, HubSpot's development of that should make it easier,
Hmm.
for it to work with tools that are doing that, right?
Right.
Instead of put all the effort on the external partner side. So
Yeah.
that's exciting to hear.
Yeah.
Um, uh, yeah, I mean, this has been awesome. Sounds like there's a part two on the way. I am like, if you have other, things that you wanted to get to today, I'm happy to.
I mean, the only other thing I can share a little bit of our roadmap of what we have coming out. So essentially, we have workflow integration is coming soon. So you will be able to perform any box actions through your workflow, through your HubSpot workflows. So, hey, new deal is created. I want to create this folder, pin it, do whatever. Automatically share this file out based on if a file is uploaded with certain things. Um, we have all kinds of ideas. There's also this thing called Box Hubs, which I don't want to get too deep into it, but these are all tool sets that Box provides. And Box Hubs allows you to basically, this is how Box sends out their proposals to their customers. They build a hub, and it's like a presentation layer where you're dropping in files and stuff, all in like almost like building a web page. But then I can just share it out as if I was sharing a file. So we're going to have Box Hubs integration. Box AI obviously is a big one. So those are some of the really exciting things that we're planning to, be releasing in the next few months as we continue to build this out.
That is really exciting because like where my mind goes is there's this project management gap that exists right now in like you have all these systems available that have stage and gate like processes. And like I remember at my last job, like we started leaning towards smart sheet because
Mhm.
it did a great job of being able to do file share and then you know um, collaborate and kind of go back and forth on those files. But there was a lot of gaps as well. And now that HubSpot has like uh, they have task-based triggers, and task-based enrollment in workflows.
Mhm.
You start to align that alongside the CRM activity, alongside a system like Box, where you can manage the files effectively. We start to like, can we take out another, piece of the stack?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and getting to this world where it's like, okay, which tools do we actually need? How many? And without sacrificing, okay, we're going to use NetSuite for all the things.
Right.
And we understand it's going to be really bad at this stuff, but it's just great to have it in one place, right?
Mhm.
How, like, which two or three tools could we get to really handle 99% of what the business needs?
Right.
Uh, it sounds like we're getting close to that, and do it in a way that really serves the users
Mhm.
first,
Mhm.
right? So this has been very exciting to see. I'd love to have you come on, for a part two to kind of
Yeah.
show off the AI stuff. I know a lot of people will be interested in that. So it's exciting, man.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks so much for having me on. This was fun.
Yeah. So until next time, guys, think about your file storage, your file management, how people need to send and manage the stuff. Find those opportunities and let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Chris.
If you can hang on,
Yeah.
uh, and just actually just I'm having to pause